What I'll do is I'll let people come in. I can see that participants are joining at the moment. So we'll do a minute or so because we're expecting quite a lot of people to join us, which is wonderful. Seeing the participants ticking over. And when it starts stabilizing, then I'll kick us off. Wonderful. I think we're fairly stable with those that are joining us now, and I hopefully safe to do a little bit of an introduction. Really delighted so many people have joined us for this webinar. That is hosted by our new Centre for Business Education, which is called iLead, named by our students and staff here at King's Business School, but also delighted that we are joined by colleagues from the University of Edinburgh as well. There's a number of people that were very interested in this topic, but due to teaching and meetings and all sorts of other things, we are recording it, so it should be available to you all. And please share it and do contribute through the chat and everything else. So my name is Sally Everett. I'm Vice Dean Education for King's Business School in King's College London. And I'm really thrilled actually that we're running this. This is a conversation about personal tutoring we've been having for quite some time, and really delighted that a number of universities are looking about how we maybe reimagine it in this space. And so that's why I'm really pleased that Edinburgh have joined us. Just to mention, iLead is a brand new centre for us. We're looking for collaborators. We're interested in transformative business education. Like every business school, I'm sure we want to equip the next generation of leaders with the capabilities and mindsets to tackle global challenges. And what we've done is set this centre up. It's a virtual centre at the moment. We don't have a physical home in King's Business School, but we are committed to working with students, with industry experts, and also our academic education pathway colleagues and other industry and other universities. And really just to cultivate a safe and nurturing environment where we can test things, we can pilot things, we can try out new initiatives with a number of different kind of evaluation methods, and then we'll share that. So we're looking at a very kind of external focus. And I'm really trying to think about how business schools can be innovators in the space. So our general vision, before I hand over and introduce our panel today, is to really be as transformative as we can. And I think the creativity and the innovation that we seek to aspire is through this webinar today, student-centered, collaborative, and evidence-based. And I think without further ado, because it's not necessarily me you want to hear from, I'd love to really introduce you to a number of colleagues on this particular panel. So from Edinburgh, we have Dr. Andrew McDermott, who's the academic design lead for the student support team at the University of Edinburgh. We also have Susan Dunnett, who is Director of Undergraduate Programmes at Edinburgh Business School at the University of Edinburgh, who's really kick-started their student success projects, and I'm sure we'll introduce what they're doing there. Dr. Claire Waddell, who's our Associate Director of Education, who will be chairing and leading us in this panel, who's at KBS, and Dr. Daniel Gellert, who's our undergraduate faculty tutor, who has been one of our faculty tutors here at King's Business School. But I also did want to say a huge thank you to those behind the scenes, the events team, and Peggy and everyone else that's involved with iLead and putting these webinars together. But without further ado, I'm very interested in thinking about the future of personal tutoring. It's something that I have pondered for years. We're trying different things. I think we welcome the different views, different practices from different universities that are joining us today. So please, I think lean in, because it will be a conversation that will go on for quite some time. So without further ado, Claire, I'm going to hand over to you to kick off our webinar on the future of personal tutoring business schools.
Thank you very much, Sally. I have to say, I don't think we're going to be finding all the answers necessarily here today. but we're going to have a good stab at maybe just looking at some of the possibilities, I reckon. So thank you, Daniel, for putting up the slides. So should we get going? Move on to the first one. So essentially, basically what we're here to talk about is the pilot that King's Business School is running of a slightly different model of personal tutoring. And so it's, in essence, it's moving away from academics and teaching staff having tutees allocated to them, and instead looking at professional services staff who are specifically recruited with particular skills in order to be able to take over that kind of support role. So next slide, please. I will be bringing Daniel in. He's not just there to help me move slides forward, by the way, in case you thought that was the case. I'm just going to give you a little bit of context for what the project is. So we found, and I'm sure that this is very similar across the sector, really, growing student numbers means that we have had far too many students allocated to teaching staff for them to really be able to properly see everyone and for the students to be able to engage with them fully. So that's one of the big kind of starting points, I suppose. And the engagement side of things is increasingly concerning because of the fact that we have students with a whole range of different needs now. And I think there's a lot more emphasis on well-being as students are coming forward more openly with concerns that they have around all kinds of personal situations that they have. And so I think, that was another area that we felt we could maybe try and do a bit better than what we had before. So the complexity of student needs is one thing. And then we also wanted to make sure that we were actually really getting a better understanding of what our students actually needed, so that we could actually put in a model that was going to address those needs more effectively. And we couldn't do that without better data, without better kind of recording of information, tracking what was happening with our students, and that sort of thing is not really in the hands of or best perhaps in the hands of academic and teaching staff who have other things that they would be much better focusing on. So what we decided is that we needed to focus on sorry, just getting rid of that, a better sort of targeted model for student support. And we wanted to also reduce the burden on the academic staff. So next slide. So essentially, this is kind of the model that we are kind of wanting to deliver. So the idea is a professionalized approach. So we've got actual full-time people now kind of delivering, and Daniel's one of them, delivering this kind of student support. And they're using techniques including sort of developing coaching skills and using coaching skills with students, but also helping them to develop those and to learn independently. We wanted to help students navigate through their university life and make that adjustment when they first come into university. And it's such a big institution. There's so much to kind of understand and get to grips with. And the whole question around how to foster belonging and inclusion, those kinds of things are challenging, especially when you have very large classes and very large cohorts. So having an individual who you can go to and is going to be there and you can talk to about a whole range of things was also important. And then the pastoral support, and it's also about signposting to other services within the university that already exist that are there for helping students. So this is a sort of overview of what we decided to do. So it's a 3-year pilot, so we could see through the entire cohort of undergraduate students. So right from the first year through to the 3rd year. We're now in the 2nd year of our pilot. So we've had our first year undergrads, that was last year. And what we've done is actually increase the number of students now because we're moving into the second year. So all of the students who were in their first year last year will know their faculty tutors. They've got the same faculty tutors, and we feel that we want to try and see whether these numbers are going to work. And I think Daniel can probably tell you whether he feels they are or not. And then next year we'll be looking at the final year, and we'll definitely be getting another faculty tutor for that year, and we'll be thinking about PG as well. So I'm going to hand over now to Daniel because he's on the cold face, as it were. He's the one who's been really helping to shape this role and gather a lot of really, really helpful data and information, but also setting up our kind of processes for how best to manage the whole project. So over to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, I'm not alone in doing this. My colleague Linda Steines unfortunately was not able to join us today. And we also have really phenomenal colleagues in arts and humanities who are doing a similar pilot in arts and humanities. So that has been kind of like really great to kind of tap into that ecosystem. So let me tell you a little bit more about what are some of the approaches that we have taken. So as Claire mentioned, that reliable and detailed data about students definitely exists already within the university. You know, data is generated literally every day. However, us as faculty tutors kind of became a focal point where different data pieces can come together. So we have a personal relationship with the students. So we have a very deep understanding of their situation, whether that's, you know, academic, personal, or professional, as they are thinking about their further steps after university. So what we have been doing is to make sure that we are actually following the students along, not just in meetings, but also how they are doing at the university as well. So what we have been doing is really to really catalyze on the data that we have already, collected in a way that we can then use it to influence and also to inform our practices, and also target intervention specifically for students that might need support. So we'll look at not just their engagement with our services, whether that's through email or group meetings, workshops, or individual meetings, but also we'll look at whether students are submitting any mitigating circumstances and disclosing any sort of information that might need a follow-up or might need some further support to make sure that the student is you know, safe, but also to that is getting all the support that they need. We also look at students who are disengaging, who might be disengaging from their studies, whether that's through attendance in in-person teaching events or through the VLE online engagement with their studies. And then we then follow and target students specifically. We've also looked at their assessments as well. So we have instituted several times where we would check how a student is doing way before the exam board, which might be kind of a late stage intervention. So we've instituted that for first year students after their very first assessment. We reach out to a certain category of students who we have noticed that potentially might need perhaps adjustments to their study habits, or might need any kind of support. Then we also do further checks as well later on when we have first term assessments, and what we have, so it's really became a proactive and reactive model. We kind of anticipate what students might need, but also we are reacting to individual circumstances as they arise. So that has been a very important and key aspect. And we have also used this data to evaluate our program. So we have been collecting data on our student engagement, specifically with our services as the faculty tutors or personal tutors. We have also collected attendance data, and mitigating circumstances and attainment data as well. And also we have surveyed our students and as well our faculty, some faculty who have been who has served as an academic staff member as a personal tutor. And so we have done a mixed method analysis of how students are thinking about the program, what are some potential indicators, and we're very happy to showcase to you that we had a really high engagement with our services. So we had almost 92% of the students had an individualized interaction, whether that's an individual meeting or an email exchange where the student reached out to their faculty tutor, and we have met almost 79% of the students in an individual meeting. This is data from the 22-23 academic year. And we have also asked our students how they are thinking and how they are feeling about our services. And we have consistently got quite high ratings and relatively high response rates as well. So we are quite happy with these engagements, but we have also noticed that it's perhaps not as quantifiable as like an engagement number or a satisfaction rate or like a promoter scale. But what we have noticed that we have early indicators of success in kind of addressing those complex issues that students might be facing, whether that's faster support in providing faster support and signposting to any disability services or any issues, money and housing problems that students might face, which we have noted, and also the literature has kind of been showing that students are coming forward with multiple challenges that they are facing while they are studying that are not always limited to academic challenges, but often have an impact on their study as well. We have also noticed that we have, due to this strong relationship with students and also that attention to how they are doing in their university, lower escalation rates to formal or specialist support in the university. So we have a support for study or support to study process where we have an informal settings and an informal meeting as a first intervention, and we have seen a higher number of those events, but then they don't escalate to higher rates, and that specifically working with like a pre-board assessment checks as well helped with kind of finding out who are the students that might need further support, so it doesn't get to necessarily a failing out of the university. These are still early indicators. We don't have concrete data just yet, which actually is one of the perhaps challenges that Claire is going to talk about, that there's not a lot of comparable data points that we can look into, but now we are seeing at least some impact of having this model. We have also noted from our academic colleagues that they feel that there is a workload reduction, especially as the first year of the program, we have worked primarily with first year students who might need a little more support, especially in the beginning of their studies. And we have also noted that students have been telling us that they feel a stronger sense of support and belonging to the university. As I'm going to show you in the next slide, when we have asked our students what they have found beneficial in interacting with us. Navigating the university, as Claire mentioned, it's a vast university. There's a lot of resources and support. So we are triaging basically for students who might need any kind of information, any kind of resource or tool to succeed in the university or to overcome any challenges. And that has become a quite strong theme that came out of our analysis of how our students have been responding to this question. And that kind of helping students navigate the university also, especially in term 2, when students might come with questions about assessments, but also progression. that's where like an advocacy element of someone who's on their side or in their corner has become an important point of focus in this targeted support system. And as we do welfare checks, when we even unconsciously, maybe to the students, when we meet them, there's also much more support that the students have found in wellbeing services. We have a fantastic colleague who's a faculty wellbeing advisor, whom we have worked very closely, and we really work to reduce that friction when we are handing over from one service to another a student. So that has been also a very, I would say, a success as well, while we are working with our students. Now, hand back to Claire.
Thank you, Daniel. I think one of the things I really should say is that Daniel has just been fantastic in really shaping this role and helping us to really navigate what our faculty tutors maybe should be doing, and really starting to get that evaluation together. And we still have, quite a bit of work to do. We're still looking at areas where we can test some things out in the coming year, and to sort of take account of some of these challenges that we've got. So one of them is to what extent do our faculty tutors deliver workshops as opposed to having one-to-one individual meetings with students? And they do deliver workshops, and some of the kind of areas will be things like group work, module selection, how to use the feedback that you get on your assessments, that kind of thing. And there's more of those kinds of workshops they can deliver, and we'll try out as well. I'm not going to read every single one of these, but it's one of the things about the role, and I think Daniel might come back in at some point, perhaps during the discussion, and is the fact that it does take quite a toll on you having all of these meetings, especially in the first semester. And so we need to make sure that we're giving our faculty tutors the kind of support they need as well, and making sure that they've got the right kind of blend of tasks and work to make the job really quite rounded. And we're still kind of working out exactly where the balance is between some of these things, and the different kind of areas that the faculty tutors are very well placed to be supporting, but actually maybe some of this is more like signposting. Where's the kind of boundary between what the faculty tutor does and when do they hand off to another service? The data side of things, I haven't sort of written it here, but it's been quite a challenge for us because we didn't have a lot of data from the previous model. So it's difficult to really quantify in a very detailed way exactly what the kind of impact and outcomes of this are without that kind of baseline data. We've got some, and we've used as much as we can find, but I think that the question now is, not the question, but one of the focus areas now is actually making sure that we are gathering as much information as possible so that we can really evaluate whether this is working and what the direction is that we want to take in the future. So I think is that the last of it, Daniel? Oh, no, looking forward. How could I forget? So next year, we're going to roll out the model to the final year. So that means that we'll actually be able to have a look at how we've supported students throughout their whole university journey. We'll look at other kind of ways in which our faculty tutors can support with perhaps materials, as well as the delivery of workshops, and how they can perhaps make really good connections and collaborations with other areas of the business school, like our careers team and our programs team, the student mentoring program that we have, and of course the academic and teaching staff, and how we can actually ensure that we're supporting as much as we can with co-curricular activities and needs, whilst also making sure that academics have that opportunity to stay connected to students. They still have their office hours. They still, are the ones who are best placed to give advice and support on the specific areas of academic study, or the content that's being taught. So I think that's basically where we've got to. And that's a very whistle stop, actually. I know we actually spent a little bit longer on that presentation than intended, but I feel like there's a lot more that we could have said, but hopefully that gives you a good flavor of how we've been approaching it, some of the things that we've been sort of juggling and considering, and how we're finding this new model. Overall, we're very pleased with the way it's going. But I think what would be great now is to hear from our colleagues Andy and Susan over at Edinburgh University, and perhaps they can have tell us all about the model they've implemented, which I think is at a slightly more developed stage than ours.
Of course. Afternoon. Let me just share my screen and make sure I'm doing that properly. Can everyone see that okay, the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
If you want to put it in presenter mode. Yeah, sorry.
Just give me a moment.
There we go.
Oh, I'm having trouble doing. I don't know why. Sorry, apologies. I can't figure out why it won't go in. It keeps popping back out. So hopefully that's okay. You can still see the slides here as you go. Apologies. Like I say, I'm from student support, not from IT. So I'll let that one slide a little bit. So good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you for having us. We're really excited about what's happening at Edinburgh, and it's great to be able to come along and hear what's happening with King's College, and kind of hear what you guys are doing, and for us to be able to let you know what we are doing as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you with a bit of a why we now have this student support model, provide you with an overview of how it works at Edinburgh, and then Susan is going to come in and tell you a little bit more detail about what's happening in the business school. So the student support model that we have represents a complete overhaul, a wholesale restructuring of how students are supported at Edinburgh. What happened is, following a review and consultation throughout 2019, plans were put in place for this model that we have, this ambitious model of student support, and we started to develop it from that stage. This integrated ideas and advice from staff and students across the university, as well as benchmarking across the sector nationally and internationally. Now, prior to implementing the system that we currently had, we had a model which included personal tutors. And this isn't to bash that system at all, but what we found in the feedback from both staff and from students is that they confirmed both a significant variation in how that student support model was being delivered, and also declining levels of satisfaction with the system overall. Now, there were also significant concerns about the sustainability of that approach at the time, with evidence of growing pressure from both personal tutors and school support teams. Now, I've been involved with the student support system just since May this year, but I'm also an academic, I'm a historian, and I know from my own personal experience, I was starting to find that students were approaching me with ever more complex challenges, and there was a difficulty in exactly how to direct those students. So that the system that we have in Edinburgh is really about providing consistent support for those students. Now, this is our system in a nutshell, which, when I saw the diagram that came up earlier on in the slide, is very similar to this. And these are the strands that make up student support at Edinburgh. What I'm going to do today is I'm really going to focus on two of these strands, which are our student advisors and our academic cohort leads, because from what I know about the faculty tutors that you have, it seems that that role kind of straddles these two roles that we have at Edinburgh. Now, when we've been implementing the system, it's a really complex model, and it's required lots of new roles to be established, new policies. As I say, however, at its core, the aim is really simple. It's about consistency. And when I say that, I don't mean that every school is implementing every aspect of the model in the same way. The size of Edinburgh as an institution and its devolved nature means that different schools have implemented the model in a way that works for them. Where the consistency comes in, however, is in the fact that all taught students will have a named student advisor, and they will be provided with access to staff who are dedicated to and skilled in enhanced course and programme advice and guidance, well-being and mental health, and professional academic and study skills development. Now, these teams are connected to the central support systems that we have at Edinburgh, and they're there to ensure a comprehensive system of student support. So the idea is that when students need support, they know exactly where to go, and more often than not, that's going to be to their named student advisor. So they have that one point of contact that if they have any questions, any challenges, that is who they can approach. Now, as well as having that student advisor, they also have an academic cohort lead. Just change slide. So an academic cohort lead is a member of academic staff who provides a visible academic presence for students when they're navigating their time at Edinburgh. What they're responsible for really is facilitating and enabling group activities and communications across their cohort. And really it's designed in order to encourage a sense of belonging and cohesiveness for those students. Now, what I've put up on the screen here is just a snapshot of some of the guidance that we had prepared for cohort leads to give them an idea of the kind of events that they should be thinking about. So these are events designed to bring students together, sometimes in a social environment. We found it particularly helpful at the start of semester to bring them together in a social environment so they can meet one another. But then as the semester went on, really students were looking for value in these interactions rather than just a social event. And the feedback we received found that events which were there to try and develop academic skills or to think about careers or networking were most helpful to students. So these are the kind of events that we thought would be helpful, whether it was in larger groups, smaller groups, or hybrid meetings as well. So that's where we are really as a model, or certainly focusing on those two aspects of the model, the student advisors and the cohort leads as an institution in Edinburgh. The schools do have a lot of flexibility in how they apply that. So what I'll do now is I'll pass over to Susan, who will tell you a little bit more about what is happening in the business school.
Thanks, Andy. I'm afraid I've got more IT bad news for you. This is not the most up-to-date version of the presentation. My slides aren't in it.
Oh.
So I'm not sure if you can go out and come back in again.
I can get those.
Slides. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can get those.
Okay. Okay, while we're doing that, I'll introduce myself. As Sally's saying, I'm Susan Dunnett and I'm the Director of Undergraduate Programmes in the Business School. And I've been responsible over the last couple of years for bringing in phase 1 of the new student support model. The student support model is a university-wide project, so it's a massive project for University of Edinburgh, and we were chosen to be one of just a handful of phase 1 schools, so bringing in the model before the rest of the university. So it was a little bit like the Open Horizon when we were beginning this. It was a scary project, I have to say, and I was responsible for bringing in the whole kind of project to the business school, but mainly overseeing the academic side of things. So the transition from a personal tutoring system to a fully student advisor led system. So Andy's done a grand job there, and that's my slides up. Although I think you might need to minimize your Zoom elements because they're coming up as black. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right, Andy, I'm probably going to have to ask you to forward the slides because you've got the control here. So as I was saying, the university developed the model, and it was up to schools really how to implement it. So there's one part of the, one strand of the model which is very fixed and controlled centrally in terms of its design, and that's the student advisors and well-being advisors section. We also have a bumped up kind of central well-being services through this, and we have what's called well-being advisors working with schools for crisis management and crisis care for students. So wellbeing advisors are there to deal with students who are really in crisis, so not necessarily proactively or ongoing care. Student advisors reside in the school, and wellbeing advisors are at university level within our wellbeing services. We also have the academic cohort leads, which I'll concentrate on in a moment. In our business school, we have peer support, which is student to student support for study. We have a fantastic group called BizPals that have been actually underway for many years, are supported by the academics and student experience in our school. And they, as I said, they provide really targeted peer support, largely based around our first year courses, and they are excellent at really helping students that are struggling. It's also a wonderful way for students to meet each other. So again, this is how the model looks generally. I'll move on to the next slide. Great, thanks Andy. So student support in the business school. Our former system was a personal tutoring system, so academics as personal tutors. We had about 90 in the school over undergraduate and postgraduate taught students. Our MBAs also had PTs. Some personal tutors having as many as 40 tutees. So you can see that there's scope for variation, there's scope for lack of consistency, there's also scope for not really knowing your students if you have 40 of them. So while the personal tutoring system did have a lot of benefits in that academics got to know students, academics helped students, academics used their enhanced expertise in assessment, feedback, and academic guidance to help students, as Andy said, as a university, we just observed far too much inconsistency. Some people don't want to be PTs, and most people in our school, most academics in our school were PTs at some point in their career, and many people were PTs shortly after joining our school, which is obviously not giving people time to learn much about our system. So it was a very imperfect system, one which was wonderful when it worked, but really disappointing when it didn't work. So as I said, we went in as a phase 1 school, and in 22-23 all our first years and all our PGT students had a student advisor. Our student advisors have a similar remit to the faculty tutors at King's College. We have more student advisors than you currently have at King's College, and I'll speak about that in a moment. So our new first years were welcomed in by student advisors and other colleagues. We're in phase 2 now, so we're over the kind of experimental year, but we're still in a year where there is massive change afoot, because we have broadened out our model to all of our students, and this has happened across the university at the same time. So there's not been as much of a phased change management, if you like, at the university. Some schools have decided to phase in. I believe the College of Science and Engineering are kind of phasing in the new model. In our college, humanities and arts, humanities and social science, we were kind of jumping in. So we've gone for all of the students. So all of our students have a student advisor. We no longer have personal tutors. We have 8 student advisors and 1 colleague who supports the student advisors administratively. We also have a manager of student services who manages that team of 9 and manages the student advisors overall. We've just had a change in personnel there just in the past 2 weeks. Each of these student advisors is responsible for 250 roughly students each. The ratio officially in the model for the university is 300 to 1 student advisor, which was a ratio that worried almost anyone who came into contact with that piece of knowledge. However, it is working out to a degree on the ground, and it was really interesting to hear Daniel's take on the ratios that they have, which seem to be much higher in terms of students to be covered. In terms of academic management, it is myself as the Director of Undergraduate Programmes, and we retain a senior tutor. So the senior tutor is responsible for student support in the school. So we're both responsible for overseeing the academic side of things, but we're also involved in the professional side as well. Particularly involved in case management. This is where we review the case of our students of concern or vulnerable students, however you term it. We've been doing case management for 3 or 4 years, but this fits nicely into our new student advisor system because the student advisors, rather than personal tutors, are responsible for chasing up and managing students that are more vulnerable. So we're both still involved in that process and overseeing guidance there. But largely the system of student advisors is managed through professional services, through the student services manager and head of teaching operations. So interestingly, our student services sort of sits within the wider area of teaching operations. Okay, thanks, Andy. Next slide. So one of the things that we did in the business school was develop the academic side of things. And interestingly, as I said, this looks different across the university. So different schools, different colleges have thought about the academic side in different ways. The model requires that we have cohort building. So academic cohort building is the kind of remit of the academic side of things. So we don't have personal tutors, but we do have academic cohort leads across the university. And for my school, what I wanted to do was really get a lot of value out of this position. So I developed what is slightly different from the rest of the university, but it works for our school, and that's the undergraduate program lead. And this is a role which kind of mirrors and mimics the PGT program director, but with a bit less responsibility for the overall degree program and a bit more responsibility for bringing students together and organising events. So the key remit of our undergraduate program leads, of which we have 15 in the school, is to build community and a sense of belonging with students. So to bring students closer to the academic faculty and to each other, to let them introduce to each other and build that sense of belonging. And building a sense of belonging through enhancing cohort identity. So we build cohort identity around our subject group areas. Our degrees broadly mirror these, and we have some degrees which are shared across the whole business school. So enhance that cohort identity as, say, a marketing student or a student of decision analytics, a student of HRM, and so on. And this has worked really well in the school, where academics are very passionate about their subject area and they're very passionate about engaging with students in that subject area. These individuals also have oversight of the degree programme, of the design, of the courses which go into it. They don't have ultimate oversight, that rests with me. However, they are involved in getting close to students, capturing student voice and redesigning, rethinking the degree programmes. And we've had really great success of using student feedback to work with redesigns of our degrees to introduce new courses. We've only been at it for a year, and we've actually already redesigned 4 of our degree programmes and brought in several new courses. The other real bonus, I think, of the undergraduate programme lead is that they represent our undergraduate degrees in the group. So our groups didn't tend to have a sense of ownership of their undergraduate degrees because they didn't develop them. They were more owned by the school as a whole, whereas postgraduate degrees tended to be developed and owned by each subject group area. So we don't have departments in our school, each one is a group. So we tend to have more kind of overarching group ownership, particularly undergraduate levels. So this has really helped groups and subject areas really understand what it is they're offering undergraduate students and think about the quality of that and the design of that. We also in this model retain our postgraduate program directors as kind of cohort leads as well. So what's been successful here? As I said, capturing student voice, degree redesign, developing new courses, thinking about group ownerships of degrees, Academic guidance, particularly around the dissertation, has been strong because students can go to someone in their subject area and talk about their dissertation. There's been fantastic student events. Events is one of the main focuses of the programme leads. They have to have at least 3 events each semester, one being a welcome, one being some kind of enriching event, whether that's an alumni panel, a quiz night, a social thing, or a careers event, a skills event, and then they also should have some event which captures student voice, and that was kind of stipulated by me in the design of the role. The careers events, alumni panels, lunches and skills sessions seem to be the most popular. As Andy said, social sessions can be very hit and miss. So what's evolving for us and has been challenging is student engagement with social events, and broadly kind of bringing students into the school. So there has to be some benefit, some tangible benefit to them that they can take away, put on their CVs, or understand that they're learning from these events. So we have to offer value in a particular way to also develop this community engagement. Okay, next slide. I'll run through these ones very quickly. So this is just some information to let you see what our student services, so this is the student advisors, how they have been engaging with students. You can see that in the blue there, they're mainly contacted through email and they're mainly responding through email. We have a few students dropping in person, and we have a few students also coming in for scheduled in-person meetings. It's nice to see that the in-person meetings outweigh the online meetings, but we've still got a long way to go to really be meeting the need of our individual students by meeting them individually. Next slide. Thanks, Andy. Okay, so this is the type of interactions by subject area, and this was gathered obviously by our student services and student advisor colleague. Again, what you can see here is that health and well-being, so we're looking at the blue ones here. Health and well-being perhaps not as high as you might imagine. Our student advisors have been really well trained in understanding mental health, in supporting well-being, and it seems that largely the types of queries they're getting are around learning and teaching. Their expertise need to be developed in this area. It is a key part of their job description. However, it's something that is a huge learning curve, as any of you know who have been personal tutors. Learning about all those degree programs, learning about all those course choices is really challenging. So we have a way to go, I think, to support our student advisors in this. Of course, they can escalate queries to program leads, to myself and to others in the school. They're very well supported, but they need to build their own kind of knowledge banks here. We also need to get across to our students in maybe a more convincing manner that we're here to support their health and well-being overall. So this is information from our pilot year. I should have said that at the beginning. Okay, so last slide here. If you can move on, thank you. So this is where, I'm sorry that's blacked out here, but this is where student advisors are signposting our students. So you can see that actually a large proportion of the signposting is going back into our teaching administration services. So we're still getting this level of perhaps confusion from students about where they go to get certain answers to certain questions. And we're also seeing perhaps the student advisor being underutilized in terms of their ability to support mental health and well-being. But do remember we have the case management system, which does highlight our most vulnerable students, and we are engaging with them in quite a significant way. So we have a lot of lessons to learn from that year one, and as we move into year two, we're still learning. I think the pros of this new model is the professionalization of student support, so that nobody is forgetting to respond to a student query. Students are getting timely responses, they're getting quick and empathetic responses. So the variation is kind of removed from that. We do need to work on perhaps them being more aware of using the service for well-being support. So I'll stop there. If you have any queries, even informal queries about the system, you want to get an inside track on it, I'm very happy to answer questions on that.
Thank you very much, Susan and Andy, for that run through what I know is actually quite a kind of quite a well, not complex, but involved kind of system, and all the time that was spent in setting it up. But hopefully that's kind of, it's given our audience a sort of picture of how each of us has approached this. In KBS, in King's, we have, as Daniel mentioned, one other faculty that's piloting a similar model to us of faculty tutors, and that's the Arts and Humanities faculty. they've only really just started sort of bringing it on board this year, but it's not rolled out at all across the university yet. So I think everybody's looking at these, these two faculties to see what how it's working. We do have, I want to open it up for questions. So if anybody has a question, if you want to put it in the Q&A, if you click on the Q&A, and we've got one that was actually in the chat, but which perhaps we could have a look at first. Well, we've got a couple in the chat actually. So the first one is, how did you bring about change in schools that have professional accreditation and use personal tutors to deliver on those requirements? I find that quite a difficult question to answer actually, because I'm not sure our personal tutors had that kind of specific role in delivering on requirements of professional accreditation, but I don't know what you feel in Edinburgh.
So we have accreditation around our accounting and
we do too.
Degrees. Personal tutors were not actually directly involved in that. It's more directly linked to course design, form of assessment, and our degree structures. It may be different, for example, in nursing, and I imagine they have retained that role in some kind of cohort building role, or a different role that academics can play. So it would be at Edinburgh, it would be a kind of repurposing of that particular strand of the PT and removing the other elements that the PT would have had in that kind of job description to maintain that professional accreditation.
Thank you. And we've got another one from Andy Fisher, which is about reference requests. And this is quite an interesting one because obviously, academics are usually have been the ones to do references. And I think, Daniel, I think you've got because we haven't actually really got to our third year undergraduates yet with our model. But Daniel, what's our plan?
Absolutely. So we have already been getting reference requests,
Yeah, okay.
and when a student has built a relationship with us and we know how they are doing in their modules and what their plans are, then we're able to provide that reference, and we have been providing that reference. But we also encourage students to build a relationship with their module tutors, so academic staff as well, especially also for references, but just in general as a kind of networking, but also as a point of learning as well for students. So it's been kind of like a mix of both supporting students with references when they do come and it's appropriate for us to write a reference, but also directing them to or signposting them to academic staff as well. We're actually working on creating a more systematic approach and kind of creating a reference system, because academic staff members as well are getting a lot of these requests, and handling those might not be the easiest at points.
I don't know if that mirrors what you do in Edinburgh at all.
Yeah, it's interesting, the question of references. So I do know that the School of Economics spoke for many, many hours together about who would. So it's the small things actually that this big change project can come up against, that actually kind of can be the fly in the ointment, if you like. So references are a bit trickier, and I think in our school, student advisors would be the first port of call for writing a reference, but the advice to students generally is to go back to any academic. It could be their program lead, or it could be someone that's taught them, it could be their dissertation advisor, but any academic that they feel they've worked closely with that might know them. We also have a system whereby tutors, so our TAs, can write a reference for a student, and then that can officially come from the school in general, as come through the sort of student advisor system. So it is a tricky one. But we hope we've resolved it in some way. I mean, the truth is that quite a lot of personal tutors didn't know the students that well either when they were writing the letters of recommendation.
Yeah, that's very true. So we've got a question from Tom Atterson, who's basically saying, with business schools, for example, we tend to have perhaps a little bit more money to be able to resource a system like this. And he's saying, what about other slightly more cash-strapped, I suppose, faculties and areas of universities that might, struggle to to kind of make the case, I suppose, for this kind of role.
I mean, if I could jump in there, Claire. I mean, at Edinburgh, it isn't just the business school. You know, this is university wide now. We started off with a smaller number of phase one schools, and now it's the whole university. So, yeah, I understand the question about funding it, but funding has been provided to make sure that this is fair across the university. When it then comes to kind of budget questions, cohort leads may need funds to carry out their events. It's not something that on the project team we get involved with. That's kind of, like I say, there's a lot of flexibility and it's kind of delegated to the schools to do that. But certainly it has been rolled out across the whole university. So we are looking forward as time goes on to get our feedback and see how it has been implemented. So.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think the business school at Edinburgh is particularly. We have a different financial model here, so I don't think we particularly have more resources. We may make quite a bit of money, but we don't necessarily keep that. So in terms of the central funding, there was central recruitment happened, for example, for student advisors, and we have been given money into each school to pay for cohort building activities, and obviously to finance the hiring and supporting of staff in our schools. So it's a centrally funded massive change project actually at Edinburgh. One of the things that has been challenging, because it is a wide-scale change project, is it created a new role at grade 6, which is our student advisors. So a lot of people who were involved in administration, for example, course administration, moved over to become student advisors, which is wonderful because they've got great institutional knowledge, but it has meant that we've had terrible churn and loss of staff across the university in our teaching offices. So that's just a little watchword for people, considering whole-scale change here, is to really consider how it affects the kind of wider ecosystem. And I think the project team were a little slow here to realize that was something that was going to be a problem. So it is something to consider. Is it creates change in lots of different systems, not simply student support.
Thanks. And I think I've slightly misrepresented Tom's question. He's put in a clarification there to say it wasn't just about funding, it was also about how transferable what we've done in business schools is applicable to other disciplines. But I think you've answered that really, because you clearly rolled it out across, the whole of the university, and not just it's not just a business school initiative. But it also links into another question I've got here, which I think would be useful to just touch on if we have enough time. We've only got 1 minute left, which is how was the project initiated and managed? How did you get the buy-in? How did you convince multiple people across all the different academic areas of this change project?
Well, I'll jump in there. So on the project team, we are quite a small team. There's only a handful of us at the moment. And we report up to a larger management board who are all who represent the colleges and the schools across the university. So I have significant buy-in there. I wouldn't say buy-in is, and Susan may know more about this in the business school, but I think when it comes to getting people to buy into it, there are people who like the personal tutor system, people who were just good personal tutors and who are sad to see it go. But I also think they can see the benefit of the system that we have. So it has been challenging at times to get that buy-in, but beyond really the project team, we're there to get the changes through and kind of facilitate those changes. But there is a wider kind of umbrella of academic staff and professional staff above us who have bought into this model for Edinburgh as well.
Yeah, and I think buy-in did come from, quite good communications across staff. I think there was, an element of people knew it was coming, so you get some buy-in. And I think to be honest, even people who really valued being a personal tutor and felt it was a really good system could see the downside of it. And I think one of the things is the downside was generally communicated sensitively to academics. Being a personal tutor is emotional labor, and then to be told that it's a terrible system and it's not good enough is actually quite damaging. So I think that one of the things the project did really well was to communicate that personal tutoring was valued, but it just simply wasn't consistent enough. And I think that that was quite a helpful message to us all.
Great, thank you. I think that's quite a good note to finish on, actually. And what I think maybe we should do is have a look at the questions, perhaps if we can afterwards, and we can send some more answers. But I think also it would be great for us to perhaps put a little written piece together, and we can send that out. And I think I've found the discussion really, really helpful, and I hope other people have too. But we seem to have had a lot of engagement, so that's really great. And I think I believe we'll be sending the slides around. I hope. Yes. Sally, did you want to come in for one last final statement or anything?
I wanted to say a huge thank you to you all. Really, really interesting to compare and contrast, and I think this definitely will be an ongoing conversation as we evaluate it. It's interesting that how we evaluated it. I've been told by the events team, I know we've had a drop off because we're just after 3 o'clock, but actually webinar attendance hasn't been strong for us, but having 70 odd attendees has been brilliant. One of our larger events, and so I think that's testament to the interest that's in this this area. So thank you, very, very much. And I know that a blog and a survey and everything will go out, and perhaps in a year's time we might want to revisit and invite some other universities and see where they are with this particular issue and initiative. But no, a huge thank you. I really enjoyed listening to you all.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.